We'll get started. So thank you all for being here today. My name is Morgan Rubinow. Right now I'm detailing as the social media lead for the Bureau of Land Management Fire Program. Normally I am a public affairs specialist for BLM Oregon, Washington out of the state office there. So today we'll be hearing more about the Operational Medical Support Program. And before we get started, I want to go over a few quick items. As you probably already saw, this is going to be recorded and we'll be sharing that recording once it's available. You can turn on closed captioning at the bottom of your screen. There's a button with 2 C's on it. So that'll turn that on. And then at the end of this session, we'll have times for question and answers. You can put your questions in the chat as we go along. We'll wait until the end of the session to go into those. You'll also be able to raise your hand once we get to the Q&A, and you can turn on your mic and camera if you'd like to ask the question live. So now I'm going to pass the floor over to Bodie Ronk, who's the Acting Division Chief of Support Services for BLM Fire and Aviation.
All right. Thank you, Morgan. So happy New Year to all. This is our first Fire Chat Friday of the new year. So we are excited to bring this program to you today. So one thing I want to preface all this with, there's something really unique and special about our Operational Medical Support Program. So this program developed from an idea that came about in the field by firefighters in the field. It worked its way up through our fire operations group up to our fire leadership team, and has grown into the program that we have today. So we're really proud of that. It's really special and neat to see a program that originated as an idea in the field comes up and develops into something that's serving all of our firefighters out there in the field. So anyway, with that, just want to thank you all for joining today. Dr. Drew Southard is our National Medical Director, and Tyler McCowan is our Program Manager for the OMS program. So they'll both be leading you through all the awesomeness that this program provides. So thank you. Back to you, Morgan.
Thanks, Bodie. All right, so to get us started, Dr. Drew, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So hello to everyone I haven't met before. I think I've met quite a few now, but really excited to be here and getting to talk to people on Fire Chat Friday. So my name is Drew Southard. I'm the Medical Director for Fire and Aviation right now. I'm mainly over the Operational Medical Support Program. I was a firefighter back when I was in my early 20s in Boulder, Colorado, did some stuff on engine and hand crews. Really actually enjoyed my time as a wildland firefighter. Thought that's probably what I was going to end up doing. For one reason or another, that didn't end up happening, and I ended up going into medicine, and I went to the University of Colorado, and then did training specifically in emergency medicine at the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque. And after we finished that, my wife and I came up here to Boise, and I've worked the last, 12 years now at St. Alphonsus at the Regional Trauma Center. Had a great career there, really enjoyed it. Got to work with amazing people and see a lot of really interesting cases throughout all the Treasure Valley. And then during that time, I worked a little bit with the Forest Service and actually the BLM, helping just some of the local forests with their medical direction. So got to know fire again and became really interested in it. And this opportunity kind of came across my desk and super exciting. So applied for it and got a commission in the United States Public Health Service. So that's why I wear a uniform. And that happened about 1.5 years ago. And so I've been with the BLM detailed to them through the Public Health Service now for just over a year. And I've really enjoyed my time. So that's how I got here.
Thank you. And thanks again for being here. So Tyler, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so Tyler McCowan, I'm the Operational Medical Support Program Manager here at NIFC. So I think like many folks, started my career seasonally working in Southern Idaho and Shoshone, kind of Twin Falls district now, but working on engines, doing some fuels work and helping to pay my way through college back home in North Dakota. Tried to stick around in North Dakota for a year, work for the Forest Service there 1 year, decided I didn't want to really pursue going to law school and really enjoyed what I was doing. So I came back out to Idaho and stuck around and worked a lot along Southern Idaho and Boise, both on the Helitack and engine programs. While I was kind of laid off one winter, I got an opportunity through the BLM to take an EMT course. So I jumped on that opportunity, and kind of my thought process was, if I'm injured out in the field, I hope somebody around me can help take care of me. And if I have that expectation of them, then also I would hope that I should be able to do it myself. So was excited to take that opportunity and have that provided to me. And with that, kind of inherited our district EMS program from, a lot of people working on it before me, which helped really set me up for success there. As we continued work, I took a job at the state office, which kind of expanded, was able to kind of take on the state EMS kind of role for Idaho there as well. So again, a lot of great people that came before us in that, but was really fortunate with those opportunities. As we've kind of progressed, obviously I've taken this job about 6 months ago with here at NIFC as the National Program Manager. Also was the IC of our regional Idaho Type 3 team. So last 3 years, that was a great experience getting to go to, I think, 6 different states, a lot of different agency administrators and rostered team members and groups that we got to meet along that way. So really, really fortunate and happy for that experience. And, just some of the things now kind of relative to this position. I'm also co-chaired the Operational Medical Support Committee, which is our BLM committee that sits underneath the FOG, as well as we'll be transitioning as the NWCG Emergency Medical Committee Chair here shortly with Khalid McRae, the current chair.
Great. Well, thanks for being here as well, Tyler. So can one of the two of you give us a little bit about the background, the history of the OMSP program? When did it get started? Why? Things like that.
Yeah, sure. And thanks, Bodie, for that kind of intro. That was actually a really great segue into this. Like you said, it was a kind of a grassroots movement. And, the states and individual programs kind of started, independently working on these, largely based on state EMS agencies and rules. So a couple of there's probably endless amounts of actual, moments where we could recognize the importance of what we were doing. But a couple of the big ones that were really kind of watershed moments, I think, for a lot of us were, Andy Palmer. That was 2008. And it's interesting even go into some of our fire refreshers and trainings. There's a lot of younger, newer folks that aren't aware of what happened there, that story. And, you look back and, that's 2008, that's quite a while ago. So good opportunity if you haven't, or you're not familiar, or it's been a while you looked at it, go back and take a look at the Dutch Creek protocols, the Dutch Creek incident there with Andy Palmer, recognizing the need for kind of taking care of our own, being able to provide emergency services out on the fire line, provide that incident leadership, help people get to that next level care, which is important. Kind of another significant one along those lines was a success story, if you want to call that, after a significant injury, but Deer Park, that came off of forest here in Idaho, and a fractured femur. And, there was even a air ambulance that, as they were coming in to load the patient, they kind of tipped back and had a tail rotor strike. So they had to move that individual to another spot, and, really highlighted as a success because we were able to work together as a team, provided some good, fire line, initial emergency care at a pretty high level to get that person, off the hill as fast as they could into a definitive care place, which was really a success. And it highlighted, again, the continued need. And that was 2010. So around that time, a few of the states, I think, Alaska, recognizing that, they're pretty dispersed in where they're working, out in the middle of nowhere. And some of the other states, Idaho, Wyoming, developing their individual state-based EMS programs. So, we were all following our state EMS rules and laws. And so requirement of that is we had medical directors that were licensed in their state. So, as part of this, we've had a lot of great doctors that have come in and helped build these programs. And we owe a lot of thanks to them to getting these things stood up. Yeah, as we all were kind of doing that, I guess there was this recognition that, we were so varied. What, one state would say was okay as far as a scope of practice, what we could do was different than other states. And if you are licensed in one state and you cross state lines, which we frequently do, that reciprocity, that protection that we're still going to be able to practice across state lines, became issues. Those were things we're starting to recognize. We had kind of different training requirements. We had different equipment, and we were doing different things. So informally, there was some great kind of leadership that helped form those independent programs to kind of get together and start to informally discuss how we could, work together and try to standardize and come together and make one program that, wouldn't change it once you cross the state line. And as those discussions began to happen, the position description for Dr. Drew's position here was developed, and he tells actually a great story of why he works for the Coast Guard in a landlocked state as a military provider here. But we're great to have him on board, and that was really the catalyst for what's happened, I think, over the last year, is getting him on board.
Great. Well, thank you. So can we go into a little bit more about what the program does for BLM Fire?
Yeah, and Tyler mentioned, I think, the biggest point there, if you come away with one thing, it's kind of care of our own. That's really what we're here to do. And what that means for the fire community is, if there is a injured firefighter on the line or wherever, we have someone that's able to provide that initial kind of emergency care to them. And that's what we're really training for, and our main goal. And how we do that, that's in development. We've got a pretty good idea. Morgan, I have one slide there. If you'll kind of show that one, the first slide there kind of really highlights what it is we're training our provider specifically to do. These are actually photos of training last year, but basically it's that initial resuscitation from these injuries. So that might look like, hemorrhage control, managing an airway, our initial patient evaluation, treatment for anaphylaxis. So we're training on some of these really important high-end things that could save someone's life. And we also talk about splinting and maybe how to reduce some dislocations. So stuff like that. That's kind of the core medical stuff. Then we have this medical incident leadership. Tyler mentioned some of the events that had happened before, and there's sometimes a lack of leadership. So we want our OMSP providers to take on a role that starts to get the ball rolling. They're trained in the medical incident report. They have, specific training more within an incident, and how to really communicate the medical situations to the other portions of the fire or whoever else needs to know. And then a pretty important thing that's a little different from, normal other operations or EMS folks is we do train a lot on patient extraction because of where we work. We work in, fairly dangerous environments that can be remote. And so getting a patient out or other providers into those environments can actually be more challenging than maybe initially people think. And so we train, how to extract with litters and short haul and all these sort of things. So that's really what the program encompasses. And again, we try and make sure that we try and embed these firefighters. They're firefighters to begin with, and they're trained in medical care, and we're trying to embed them with our initial attack crews. That's really our focus, as opposed to some of the other focuses, maybe the other agencies, which we'll talk about later. But that's what we do.
Great. So could you clarify, is this an EMS program?
Yeah, that comes up a lot. So, I think it's important for us to understand that we're not an EMS agency program per se. And EMS is a specific term for the public, and it basically EMS agencies and EMS providers in the public are actually regulated by state laws and state legislation and all this sort of stuff. And they have a mandate to basically respond to emergencies to the general public. And our program, that's not our primary response. Not that doesn't happen occasionally, but what we're really trying to train for is the injured initial attack wildfire or BLM employee in the field. And so we actually fall under a different set of regulations and rules. We're under the BLM. We don't train, as much for things like you might see in the general public, like babies or, pregnancy, stuff like that. Not, again, that we couldn't run into this stuff, but that's not our main focus. And so we do share some of the foundational education that EMS agencies use. So that's why we have EMTs and EMRs, but we're not actually technically an EMS agency or department. I think it's a good distinction. We're an operational medical support program. So we're there to provide support to our operations.
Great, thank you. So can one of you tell us who can participate in the OMSP program?
So for participation in the program, a couple things that have to be met. And, again, for the BLM, our authorities for this program comes from the Assistant Director of Fire and Aviation, basically saying that this is a part of a, successful fire management program is to be able to take care of our employees that are out in the field. So, that's where our authority for this program comes from. As you can see, there's some requirements here as we look at, how to be a provider within here. And of course, for BLM employees and being a part of the wildfire program. So if you're a primary, secondary position, or if you're somebody that, has a red card, goes out and supports incidents and fires, this is something that, this is geared towards those folks. We utilize an external validation of education. So something that says you've met a certain standard of education. And for us, that's the National Registry of EMTs. So you can be an EMR, EMT, or an advanced paramedic, or have a valid, current state license. Those basically indicate to us you've met that standard for education. And we'll move forward with kind of our internal process after that, which is just a validation of the skills. So there's going to be some annual lectures and material and coursework that everyone will have to complete. And then there'll be a hands-on skills evaluation and verification of those skills by a delegated or authorized instructor. So, the internal process for that. And then as well as we'll have to maintain those. So every year, 13 months, we'll need to maintain those and kind of remain in compliance with kind of the things laid out in our program manuals. And if I think the next slide, I think just kind of an overview too, here's kind of a good look at the programs that we do currently have. So the blue states there, to include the Great Basin Smoke Jumpers, were some of the states and programs that we brought on last year. Those were the pilot program states. And, really, I think, we'll have a opportunity to talk about what we covered last year. The green states either have been brought on or will be brought on this year. We anticipate getting up to Alaska and working with the hotshot crews, the smoke jumpers, and some of the AFS folks there. Excited to see New Mexico, California, and Oregon and Washington came on kind of in the fall last year. Yellow states, looking at Arizona, Colorado, either this winter or kind of next spring, so 2024, bringing those on board. So just kind of a overall look, if you're part of those states, those are the states that have kind of been adopted and brought into the Operational Medical Support Program.
Great, thank you. And then can one of you tell us about the recent pilot program?
Yeah, so as Tyler just kind of had on that last diagram there, we had roughly six programs. We had 5 states, and then we had the Great Smoke Jumper, or the Great Basin Smoke Jumpers, join. And in that pilot program, we did a lot of initial training, and we ran it. It was really, I think, pretty successful. And obviously there was some learning to be done, but I appreciate all the leadership as well as the providers who volunteered, or we were voluntold, I'm not sure, to join this program, but they did a great job. And so we trained roughly 200 EMTs in the OMSP program. So those are people that already had their EMT, but we brought them in, and we were able to authorize about 144 to actually practice in the program in the first year. So I think that's great success. That's a lot of hard work from a lot of people. And we created the policies, we created the procedure manuals, we created our protocols. So all that had to be done. We worked a lot with the solicitors. There's a lot of back end kind of legal policy stuff that is not very exciting, but has to be done. But in the end, what does count is we had over 30 kind of patient care interactions that were documented. We know there's probably more than that, but we were able to intervene in 30 situations for folks. Interestingly, about 20 of those, or I'm sorry, about 8 or 10 of those were on the general public. So we had a couple of really bad car accidents that our firefighters kind of rolled up on and were able to help. And I think instrumentally probably did save at least 1 or 2 people's lives there. But some of the injuries we saw were cardiac arrest. We had a couple of dislocated shoulders and a dislocated patella. We had, I think, a fractured femur, and then we had some minor lacerations and cuts. And so the injuries we saw were what we were, roughly anticipating and expected and trained for. And I think we made a difference. And so that's what we hope to continue.
Great, thank you. Well, it sounds like this training has already come in handy quite a few times. So, that's great to hear that. So, what type of professional development opportunities exist through this program?
Yeah, that's a great question, Morgan. So, if we look back at those states that were pilot programs, I think so 5 states, 6 programs, we're able to put on 8 trainings for our providers with those programs. So that is largely reliant on that local and state support for these programs, not just to host these things, but to send their providers and to send their folks and support them pursuing this. So, really pleased with that effort. And as we look towards this year, we're, at 9 different states that we're going to have trainings. Between 12 or 13 different trainings we'll hold this year. So great opportunities for any providers, anybody interested to get out there and attend one of these trainings. They're all a little bit varied, but again, rely heavily on that local and state support to make happen. So really appreciative of those efforts. There was kind of for our OMS leadership, a lot of, we call them coordinators, those people that manage their program at the state or program level for like the Great Basin Smoke Jumpers, Alaska Smoke Jumpers, but put on an annual training down in Phoenix, Arizona this year. It was a great opportunity to get folks together, do a little bit of team building, provide some opportunities to share a lot of the information and knowledge that we've developed over the last couple of years of building these programs. So it's been really great to see and building that camaraderie with that group. And, also a great opportunity for people that are interested in becoming delegated instructors within this program to go through that course as well. So again, we have those annual trainings for providers, a once a year committee and leadership meeting that will happen in person as we move around. And then we look at kind of positions. Obviously, we look at, what we've been able to establish and get support for. My program manager position here, as well as some states, Idaho, Nevada specifically, having dedicated positions for some of their OMS coordinators. So a lot more to continue to develop with this program as we kind of continue to build on what we have as that pilot year. And we'll see there'll be some more opportunities here in the near future.
Awesome. So since the program is pretty new, what does the future look like?
Yeah, hopefully really bright. That's my goal. I mean, it's super unique to be part of kind of a startup within the federal government, right? I mean, this program never existed before. And so we're doing a pilot program, and now we're on to basically having an established program that we're going to build. And that's really probably the next year and a half is to get the rest of the states on board, really build up the numbers. I don't know the exact number of providers that we're shooting for. Roughly, I think 10% of our field going fire staff is probably in there. So, whether that's 300-400, I think is probably where we're going to end up, probably by 2024, 25 would be my guess. And, if we have more than that, that's great. I think we'll just kind of see what the need is and how, at the district level, people are able to use the program, what benefits it has for it. But, my personal goal, and I think I speak a little bit for the program, is we really want to make this the expectation that, if there's a significant injury, we have a provider that's going to be able to respond rather than, an exception, like, oh, we were just lucky it happened. Like, we want to make this an expectation. And I think we'll get there. It's going to take a little while, and we're right now focused very much on what I call core foundational skills. We want to build, a really good baseline level, and then from there, once we've kind of established that our systems and programs work and training, and we get that figured out, we can, bring it up to the next level. We can do more interventions, have different levels of care, that sort of stuff. Also, it's a little outside of the scope of the OMSP program per se, but, the SISMs and, serious accident investigations and stuff like that, I think naturally our providers are going to be involved in some of those events. And so we'll be part of those. We also know on larger incidents, although our program's not specifically designed to really run medical units and stuff like that, our providers and our crews are out on large incidents. So we're going to be part of large incident medical care. What the future that looks like, I think, is unknown and pretty interesting at this point. There's a lot of changes coming there, and we're just trying to position ourselves as BLM to be part of that discussion and, at the table when it's being talked about. Tyler's going to be the the co-chair of the NWC EMC committee, which you just mentioned, and I believe Kevin Norton is the co-chair with him, who's one of our smoke jumpers that's currently detailed into the Idaho position. So that's really cool for BLM to be kind of leading a lot of these NWCG activities. And then a career kind of ladder we'd like to see in our program eventually, where we have, you know, an ability for our firefighters that are interested in kind of this medical care, like using it to help them, you know, move through their career in the BLM. So hopefully that's something we can achieve, and Tyler's position is a start on that. Like he mentioned, the other state coordinators, and, you know, hopefully as the program builds and we require more people to do jobs for us, that can expand as well. So all good things. It's a really exciting time to be part of Wildland Fire Health and part of the program.
Great, thanks. So let's say there's some people on this call who are really interested in participating in this program. Who can they contact? How do they go about doing that?
So I don't know if Kevin Norton is on or not, but co-chair of the Operational Medical Support Committee with myself, not on the EMC. Kevin, I don't know if you knew that. Yeah, Drew was like, hey, you're going to co-chair the EMC, co-chair of our Operational Medical Support Committee. But here's our contact list for our committee reps. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to these folks. They can help provide some information and give you a little background. And of course, you can reach out to me. I'm happy to do so as well. I think there's a lot of people on here that have, you know, really had a lot to do with creating this program as a whole, like Bodie mentioned at the start, a grassroots movement. And there's a lot of leadership not included in here that helped make this program what it is today. So there's a lot of great efforts and people that have championed this effort as a whole to make us get to this point where we're at. If you're interested in participating, want to know more, this is a good place to start. We also have our website, which I think you posted the link in the chat, or Ken. And of course, happy to answer any emails or questions myself.
Great, thank you. And just so everyone knows, we'll make sure that these slides go out via email when we send out the recording. So if you didn't get a chance to write down everything, don't worry. So now we'll move into the live Q&A portion. So first, we'll open up the floor. If there's anyone who wants to raise their hand, we can call on you and we can have you hop on and ask a question.
I got one question.
Okay, go ahead.
I put it in the chat as well, but chapter 6.3, it talks about the EMR. What's the difference between an EMR and an EMT when it comes to certification in the program?
Good question. So EMR and EMTs are, they are both designated like education classes or certifications in education. EMT, Tyler, correct me, or if someone else, is I think roughly 180 hours of coursework, or it's somewhere in there. We could actually get the exact number. I don't want to make it up. And EMR is something like 60. So generally, you know, the EMT scope is a lot higher. It requires more time. And in the kind of EMS world, it typically goes EMR or first responders, EMTs, and then paramedics, and then above that. So it's just a mark of that. Within our own program, they function relatively similar. There's a few skills like advanced airways, generally giving epinephrine out of a vial, and a few other things that the EMTs do that the EMRs don't. But EMR is actually, it's a really good skill set for a lot of our firefighters, because it's kind of a great core basic. It's above that first aid, but doesn't require, you know, usually EMT courses traditionally have been several months long with ride-alongs and all this sort of stuff. So it's something that someone who's like employed, you know, primarily as a firefighter can actually usually get through a little bit easier. And the skill set is that we use them for with our training is still pretty high and very useful. So there is a website if you want to look at specific hour requirements and all that sort of stuff for those two different certifications. It'll be there.
So yeah, the National Registry website would be a good place to start with that. Some of the requirements are state by state. So some are competency based, not necessarily hours based for EMT or EMR, but Those will vary by state, and there's kind of a standard on the NREMT website there for education for EMRs or EMTs.
So my follow-up with that is, wilderness first responder. Does that meet your guys' guidelines, or is that just a?
That's a good one as well. So wilderness first responder, great course. There is a bridge course, I believe, to the EMR. We don't currently certify the wilderness first responders within the OMSP. And sorry if this is getting a little boring or technical on the policy standpoint, but the reason is that the National Registry of EMTs doesn't recognize that certification. And so we're trying to have kind of a very, I guess, standardized and protocol kind of approach, and to match what other sort of agencies of our size and caliber would do. And they're usually using the National Registry of EMTs. And so they don't recognize that specific wilderness first responder as a provider level at the EMS level. And so we didn't feel like we should do that either. So it's actually exceptionally good training. Gone through a lot of it myself, and very applicable to our environment per se. There's a few things that they don't cover that the National Registry wants them to. So if someone is interested in that, there is a way to bridge that over to the EMR, and then we would certify them in our program as an EMR.
Great, thank you. So there's someone who has their hand raised. D. Dobbins, if you want to come off mute, you can ask your question.
Yeah, thank you. Dan Dobbins, Superintendent, Diamond Mountain Hot Shots. Just a quick question here. 2 questions, actually, and a little background. We get a lot of EMTs from across the country, right? And then we generally ask them to get to NorCal EMS to get our state medical direction. Is the intent of this program, and maybe I'm just missing it here, maybe, and forgive my ignorance, but is this the intent of this program to replace that requirement? And they would fall under OMSP as opposed to, or would they still need to get state medical direction?
So the intent of the program would be that they no longer need the state medical direction. And so we'll be a national program. One of the benefits of that is, if we're following a state program, then it's not really interstate, right? And so we can't transfer and travel. And as you guys travel all the time, it's hard. You don't know exactly what state you're going to be in. So that set up a lot of difficulties. And that was actually one of the main motivations, I think, to get this program. So, if you guys wake up in California and you end up in Washington that night and you're in Oregon the next day, you're still going to have the same medical protocols, medical direction, supervision, and ability to practice. And so that will eventually, we're moving away from that. There are some other, there are some states that have kept a local medical director, but they're functioning under the Operational Medical Support Program. They're not actually functioning under the state EMS. Does that clarify that for you?
Yes,
I think we met out there on our staff ride too, if I'm not incorrect, but yeah.
We sure did. And then second question, that meets a lot of things for us. You hit it all on the head there with how much we travel running under a state medical direction. That is worrisome. I won't say it was a problem, but worrisome at times. Just knowing if folks knew what exactly their protocols were. So thanks for that. And second is there any planned courses in California coming up this spring?
Yeah, great question. So Eric Solomon is your California rep to the OMSC, and he's came in brand new, right when we were meeting in Phoenix. So trying to catch him up to speed. I'm trying to think, it was potentially the first week of May. It was still, I know California was still undetermined on an exact date, but we'll make sure to get you guys tied in and be able to help you out. That being said, there are some other, trainings that are scheduled nearby. Nevada's got one specifically kind of for their IHC and Helitac folks. So we can definitely make sure to get you in something.
And I want to kind of tag on to what Tyler said there. As this is a national program, if there's training opportunities, people come on at different times, different critical stuff, et cetera. That's been, I think, a barrier in the past is you had to meet your training in this district. And with this, you can go anywhere in the country that we're having a training, and you're going to meet the minimum standards and basic qualifications. So for those soups out there who have crew members that, may not be able to make one of the trainings nearest to them, know that that's an option. And I think actually super helpful cross training. At the last one we just did in Nevada, we had some folks from Arizona and other states there as well. So that should help with getting people onboarded.
Awesome. Thank you. And we'll get with Eric and see if we can help out with the planning.
Thanks.
Great. So thank you for asking that question. And I know there's some in the chat, so I'm going to go to this one that just popped in from Kent. So if a state program currently has a higher level of care than the OMSP, will those have to be reduced to have employees participate in the OMSP?
So the answer could be maybe, as the answer to every good question always is. In general, we have a pretty significant scope of practice that is, especially for the EMT level, at or above what most states would do. It's a little less than most advanced EMTs, and it's specifically designed for the injuries we've seen. It's going to cover 95% of what we do, 99%. And I think Kent is, if I'm not mistaken, but Alaska, which is probably the most unique situation up there. And so there are some ways, and we do what's called a co-program, where they can operate very locally, like in a state. And I would say the other area where this may happen is in the dunes down in California. But they operate, as a unique program there. They follow whatever they're doing in that state. They have a higher level scope of practice, or they have some local medical protocols. And as long as they've got the right supervision for that, so with a local medical director that's helping to oversee that, we generally will have no problem with that, and we can use those. When those folks travel to the rest of the places they go, they'll just fall into the regular OMSP scope of practice unless there's some specific reason not to. So we've tried to allow, for certain areas in the country that have really pretty unique needs, to have an expanded scope of practice. So that does exist. There's a couple examples out there. We can talk more offline about those, but our intent is to in general, at least everyone is going to make the minimum baseline standard that we have, and then if people do need to go above and beyond, then that's great. It's fine. We just need to make sure we have the right supervision for that, and make sure we have some of the backstops in place. We need to have that happen.
Great, thank you. So Al, I see your hand, but let me just get to this one question real quick before I lose it in the chat. Why do we not have the same EMS standards as the Forest Service? We are on a lot of the same fires together, and it would make standards the same all across the board, like other quals.
Yeah, that's a great question, and something we've talked a lot about. This, I think, is maybe part of the future and what that looks like exactly. So just historically, the Park Service was kind of the I would say first leader in this area, and they have the Park Service protocols, and I'm sure a lot of people here maybe worked for the Park Service or knew that. Interestingly enough, the parks actually don't have as many fire-going personnel. They don't deal with as much travel as we do. They have some really high-end programs, like I'm thinking Yosemite Search and Rescue and Zion, really high-end focused things that are in one state. They have a little bit more, I guess, control over that. The Forest Service, about 3 or 4 years ago, decided to join that program. And so they had a Parks and Forest Service program that was combined. It turns out that it actually, it was a great first attempt. It didn't eventually pan out, and I won't speak for the Forest Service or Parks, but I will say there's just some reasons that it was actually different. And training 2 or 3 providers on forest, throughout the nation is a little different than having, a full-time duty workforce that's responsible for a small park. And so they actually separated that agreement. And we've been working with the Forest Service quite a bit to try and make everything as more similar than it is different. I think there's a lot, being in 2 different departments of, the government. They have different laws and organizations and rules and all this sort of stuff. So that actually plays a lot into it. And we felt that currently, in discussion with our leadership, we wanted to have our own program that we could stand up quicker, get mobilized, do our pilot programs, establish everything here, and then in the future work towards more of a unified interagency type approach. And I do think that's coming. I mean, that's why we're on the EMCs and on the other NWCG stuff. But yeah, for a variety of reasons, it gets kind of complicated and hard if you're trying to move a project through, especially a startup, and you're trying to coordinate with that level. So that's the short answer. Happy to talk to anyone offline about it, but us and the Forest Service are aligned on a lot of things. I mean, I literally just got a text from the Forest Service medical director. We talk probably 3 times a week. So we are moving to make it more alike than different.
Thank you. So Al, if you want to pop on, you can ask your question.
Thank you. Just wondering if there's been any discussion regarding recognition of the EMT in the position description, or if there's been an attempt to create an element within current firefighter PDs or a standalone PD that really provides the incentive for people to get the qualification and do the job, and provide a certified avenue for training and that sort of thing. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, Al, great question. And Bodie, I know if you're still on too, feel free to jump in here, but that is a discussion, and we've kind of gone through a lot of different possibilities with how we could make sure that this is either part of somebody's position description, that there's incentive and people are compensated for the work and the effort to put towards this. They're obviously providing a great service to us out in the field. Currently there are a couple PDs that my PD as one is in kind of the occupational health and safety training, and some of the training ones that were done for Idaho and Nevada, but not specific to EMTs. On the DOI level, we talked about potentially putting this on some PDs and what that might look like, knowing that the Park Service has something similar. But really it's a percentage of duties kind of discussion right now, and what that would actually look like if it gets included in an actual PD or not. So that is something as we continue to develop this program, we'll constantly evaluate and try to find ways to make that kind of mesh and recognize that these are people filling these roles within our program.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. It just seems like to strike while the iron's hot now that we're having the 455 series discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, good point.
Thank you, Tyler. So does anyone else have any questions? You can raise your hand or put them in the chat. Darren, go ahead.
I guess I was going to preface it in the chat with just appreciation for how far we've come, I guess, with supportive EMS training and medical direction and all that. So I really appreciate that. I guess I'm wondering if with regard to short haul and emergency extraction of injured firefighters, if that's really the best standard of care, or if we would be better off trying to outfit more ships, type 1, type 2 ships with hoist capabilities, or even just long line extraction with Bowman bags or TRS. I don't really like reviewing case studies from short haul. I don't really see the effectiveness there that we should probably be looking for in terms of being able to get people out of, hairy situations in the backcountry. Thanks.
Yeah, Darren, great comment. And, you're right. We look at a lot of the lessons learned reviews and stuff with short haul, and I still think it's a valuable tool. It's something that's helped do a lot of great things. And we look at some of the other programs, within, BLM, we have the STEP program, the single toe exit under power, I think, or something along those lines. If there's if I'm off there, if somebody can correct me, but being able to essentially, whether toe in or single skid into a uneven surface, right, a hillside or something, to help extract some folks, or insert providers. There is, the helicopter extraction, long line, last stop. There's a few things out there, right? The thought is that, we got to keep evaluating these things and see what makes sense and is the most appropriate for our providers. So that is a discussion as we look at kind of our aviation branches and stuff, and how do we improve that? How do we make this the best opportunity for our firefighters to get, you know, off a hill, off a fire, into definitive care? And you're right, there's more work to be done.
Thanks, Tyler. Does anyone else have any other questions? Go ahead. I think Ada might be, or AD Avila.
Yeah, you got it. Hey, no, it's Angel. I'm out of a Bishop field office down here in California. Hey, so I'm a transfer from the Forest Service, and I kind of help start a little bit here on the INEO. But so as an EMT, are they gonna put the couple comments or questions? But are they gonna put like the EMT line EMT on the red card for BLM? And then also, is management gonna support, like, you know, every 2 years refresher? You know, are they gonna reimburse the guys if you guys don't know how that works? Sometimes you can make it. Are you guys also gonna like help out like the seasonals, or ADs for BLM? How is that gonna look like?
Yeah, I'll start with that. I guess there's a couple questions in there. I think you know, some of the training, right? And so to address kind of the training, the continuing education requirements, and like I said, that's really been from the support of that state leadership, those program leaderships. California being a new state bringing on this year, and you know, their coordinator being really new to just the committee as a whole. You know, there'll be some continual growth there, and you know, support for that will come from your local leadership and being able to put those trainings on. So, you know, work with your supervisor if there's questions, and we're happy to come out and kind of present and discuss, you know, what we're able to provide at the national level. And, you know, we did put together a course on the Wildland Fire Learning Portal that would help kind of alleviate some of the in-person training requirements and times, not to exclude that requirement for that in-person hands-on training, but an opportunity for people to kind of blend some of the training with some online stuff when appropriate. As far as like the red card qualification, if you meet all the qualifications required in the federal supplement for the Fireline EMT, EMTF, and then that's a discussion with your district and state leadership on whether or not they want you to do that. But you would meet those, if you meet those requirements as a federal program, EMT, and you're PAC tested and have those things that are current, you could meet that with support of your district management.
Great, thank you. So we had a question in the chat, so I'm going to read it. Many permanent firefighters have been encouraged or funded to get and keep a WFR cert, and there's a questionable reliance on Good Samaritan laws and no duty to act as liability protection. Will units still be able to pay for WFR training going forward? And will WFR still be expected to act on the fire line?
I'll take a stab. There's a couple of, this is a complex one, and I won't be the first time I don't have the answer to something. So, I guess from my perspective, the OMSP, you know, I would like to see more of the funding going towards EMR, just because that's the certification we can use, and that'll probably, you know, that'll be more useful long term as we develop this program. The second question in there about Good Samaritan laws, no duty to act. You know, there's never, if you're looking for 100% medicine, you're never going to find it. And I think that's similar for law. Most times when we're dealing with federal employees and federal lands, or even contractors or cooperators on federal fires, you know, our liability as BLM employees that are acting in the best interest of the patient, I've not ever seen a case been brought up against that. The only case law I've ever seen is actually against a Park Service EMS person who was off duty and treating someone outside in California, and the court found in favor of them, actually. So very low liability issues, especially at the WFR level, or the Wilderness First Responder level. You're, just to be honest, you're not doing a lot of skills that would actually invoke and endanger people. That's one of the reasons why our program has kind of kept the skill level at the EMT advanced, area in our scope of practice, because we know a lot of our folks aren't going to be able to train all the time. And so, when we talk about adding paramedics to the program and stuff like that, that's when we start doing some skills that are, significantly more dangerous and such. And so, while I can't say 100% nothing would ever happen, I think using, the woofer skill level is fine. As like I said, I'd prefer to see people start shifting that to the EMR, which is not going to be that significant difference of a cost or time compared to the woofer. And then when they are with our program, we'll be giving them kind of the additional fire line aspects of that with extraction, medical incident leadership, and some of the injury stuff that we do. That'll be more specific for the job than even the woofer would be. And then as far as, will units still be able to pay for the training? I would have to defer to someone else in that category, but I think if you've been paying for training, then EMR training and such would be similar. So, did I make anything up, Tyler or Bodie, that you need to correct again?
No.
Great, thank you for answering. So, just for a quick time check, we have a little over 5 minutes left in this session, so I'd say we have time for one more question if anyone has one. All right, well, I'm gonna take that silence as there aren't any additional questions. So just want to say thank you all for coming today. Thank you to Dr. Drew, Tyler, and Bodie for hopping on and giving us some information today and speaking to you all. Dr. Drew, Tyler, if you have anything real quick you want to close this out with, feel free. Otherwise, we'll be done.
I just appreciate the support of, at the ground level for the people who come out and get trained, and all the way up to the top leadership who's been instrumental in getting this program off the ground. And we look forward to making it a success. Tyler and I are open and available to talk. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. No matter what, we're here. So we're here for the field.
Yep, nailed my thoughts exactly, Drew. So, yep, we can't say enough about all the support that we've gotten from all the different states and districts. So as much as we can do to help you guys with that, please let us know.
Great, thank you. Well, we have another Fire Chat Friday set up for April. You have an invite, a calendar invite, and more information will be coming on that in the next couple of weeks. So thank you all for joining today, and see you soon.